Today on a really good sex chat, we're talking with Saran, who lives in Adelaide, South Australia. Saran's an ABI advocate and lived experience advocate. She's currently pursuing a master's looking at lived experience within research, and she shares her story of living with stroke and also her work with us today. So let's get into the chat.
Welcome to A Really Good Sex Chat, a podcast aiming to open up conversations about disability and sexuality. I'm your host, Candice Care-Unger, psychosexual therapist and specialist social worker at Care Rehab. Join us as we have frank conversations about sexuality, disability, fertility, pleasure, dating, and everything in between. This podcast is brought to you by Care Rehab and recorded on Worimi country.
Huge welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We had an opportunity to have a teaching gig together. My main takeaway from that opportunity was like, ooh, I want to chat with more Saran. I don't want to do any more teaching. I want to do the listening, which is how we've ended up meeting today. So it's a bit exciting. For those of our folk that tune into the podcast that don't know who you are you okay just to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Saran. I'm now 50. I had my stroke in 2013, so 12 years ago. Before that, my pre-stroke life was I managed a software company and that kind of thing, and suddenly my life just stopped. I lost my complete left side and had to learn to walk again and do that kind of thing. That was the physical stuff, but there was a whole lot of unseen. But yeah, and it's just still going now.
So do you want to maybe elaborate a little on the unseen? Because I think that's something that a lot of people don't really understand.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's a lot of the unseen and a lot of the unspoken, really, isn't it? So there was fatigue, certainly. There was a huge depression, that real loss of identity. I guess from a physical sort of perspective, there was that proprioception. So for a while I would walk into, actually I still sort of do when I'm tired, walk into the door, my center of balance is really off. And the thing that I'm quite sort of vocal about is that whole sort of, I guess, dynamics of my family, but also certainly with my partner. And so the sex and intimacy and incontinence.
Yeah. So pre-stroke, you were in a family. You're part of a family. Your mum?
So during the time, so when I had the stroke, my kids were 3, 7, and 9. My partner and I had been together for 10 years already.
You were in the thick of it. Little kids, raising the family, routine. Few of them at school, few of them at home. It's a busy time of life. Okay. And then the stroke obviously was not planned. That's not the type of thing people plan. Rehab for you, weeks, months? What was your experience of that?
So when I was in hospital, and obviously I had no clue what a stroke was and what it would actually entail, they told me I'd be in hospital for a month and rehab for 3 months. I was a therapist's worst nightmare, really. I lasted 8 days in the hospital and 3 weeks in rehab, but did a lot of outpatient. I was really bad. I just wanted to walk, even though, and it was good. Like I had really, really good therapists who really focused on my quality of movement, but I wanted to, get out there. So I was like first up banned from leaving my room without someone or a wheelchair. So I kept getting caught going through the reception, and then then they said, okay, you can walk, through the reception area. So I walked to the kitchen, I'd get caught.
We'll put you in the non-compliant category, which is like, I'm sure what everyone was saying about you when you went around. Oh, she's so non-compliant. So here we go. Fast forward quite a few years, more than a decade now. And what are you doing with yourself now?
So I tried to get back to work for quite a bit. I didn't really have a lot of guidance in regard to life after stroke.
Is that because you ran out the door?
That's probably true. And I still do actually wonder whether or not if someone had actually sort of given me advice, would I have taken it? Would I have heard it? I don't know, probably not. After about 8 years where I sort of thought, okay, I really can't work full time, even though I tried several times. And I started working at the Stroke Foundation in the Young Stroke Project. I was suddenly what I thought was sort of in a specialty area. What I didn't realise was that research and projects and stuff work at a snail's pace. So I had to sort of get used to that. Poor Stroke Foundation had to sort of deal with me with that one. But what it did actually sort of made me realise was that I guess I wanted people that were having a stroke after me to have a better journey, to sort of get to a certain level of living their best life way sooner than I did, because it took a long, long time. So I started public speaking and doing a lot of advocacy and pushing in committees and that kind of thing. And then I started getting involved in research. And now I do a lot of sort of lived experience research, and I'm doing a formal qualification of research. But a lot of it is sort of saying, no, these are the things that we need to talk about. Yes, it's great that you guys have great intentions and that's fantastic. However, these are the topics that we need to talk about.
And one of those hot topics is sexuality after stroke, eh?
So much so. Yes, yes.
What do you kind of, with hindsight, wish that you knew that took you 13 years to work out?
Anything, no one said anything to us at all. And again, we had a young family. I was 38, not old, and still, that prime side of things, and having sort of no sensation on my left at all. I have a really good partner who basically his priority was that he just didn't, he knew that I was in pain. And so the last thing he wanted to do was do anything that would, actually cause more issues. So that was great. Cause I do know that lots of people have lost partners because of it, which is really that was devastating. But when we did sort of try it, it was just a shambles. We didn't know what to do. I didn't know, I could barely even stand up properly. I didn't realize that you had to, put your calf down to stand up and that kind of thing. So I just certainly didn't know what to do in bed after that. It was like, there was nothing. I had no grip. I had no strength, but we were never spoken to about it.
And how did you guys kind of find your way back into an intimate life? Communication between the two of you about it, or was it like a silence issue, or what's been your experience?
Yes, it is and still is a silence issue. It's ironic that I'm here talking to you and I do it everywhere I can except at home. So
Because it's hard,
because
it's
I
vulnerable.
think yeah, it's just hard, and it's so bad that we were never even, there wasn't even a conversation. And I think this is a big one, obviously, but if clinicians don't talk to you about any topic, a little bit later you're kind of thinking about it and you think, well, hang on, those clinicians haven't spoken to me about it, so it mustn't be important. And then in your head you're kind of thinking, okay, well, hang on, but I'm thinking about it, so I must be weird. So there's that isolation and shame and stigma and thinking, oh my God, I must just be really weird. So, let's try and avoid it altogether. It's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah. And even now, is it like a difficult topic to bring up with your partner?
Yeah,
What
it
do you
really
put that
is.
down to? A bit of culture, a bit of society, a bit of what?
I mean, it's certainly society. From my family perspective, we've just got into kind of a silence circle. And so he knows that I do stuff like this. He'll read my presentation or whatever, but nothing improves. It's just, it's really, really weird. But I think it's been so long.
So it's hard to kind of start somewhere when it's been a long time not
Yeah.
talking about it. Yeah, like a muscle that you've not used.
I
Yeah.
mean, we certainly do. It's not comfortable, and I'm always really worried about like my incontinence and stuff like that. So, there are other issues that I probably need to speak to him about those. But yes, it is quite difficult.
Can we talk about incontinence for a minute here? Is that something that is part of stroke? I don't know that everyone necessarily realizes that. The brain
Mm,
controls bladder and bowel function. And
yeah.
is that something you knew? Did you know that the brain is what controls all of that type of function?
I didn't know that. What I did know so basically, I say to people, if you cut a line straight down the middle of me, on my left side, I have no sensation, and I mean no sensation at all. And so when I'm talking about it, I mean inside out. So I can, I used to put tampons in, and I couldn't feel anything. And so obviously, from a sex perspective, it was like, okay, well, I can't feel anything, and so it's just weird. But I didn't know about the brain side of it, but I just looked at it as in, well, I don't have any sensation. So from an incontinence perspective, again, it was a bit of, they did speak about it. They'd say, do you have incontinence? Yep. That was a tick box. I was like, yep, got tick incontinence. And then we just move on kind of thing. And it wasn't until about 9 years later that I went to a women's physio, like postnatal and stuff like that my exercise physio said, do the normal tick box, do you have incontinence yet? She said, oh, you reckon we can do something about that? I'm like, no, you can't. And she's like, yeah, we can. And I said, yeah, but I can't engage my core. I can't engage my pelvic floor or anything. She goes, no, that's okay. She said, we have, devices like pessary, and there's like an Emsella chair and that kind of thing. And we can do different kind of exercises that can help you build the muscle up around, in your legs and your bum and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, that was like, are you serious? 9 years later. And it was just literally lucky that I went to these people.
And has that been helpful? Like, do you feel like there's been some interventions that have been somewhat useful?
It certainly has made me feel a lot more comfortable. I think, and I don't know whether or not it's because I'm going through menopause or not, but it is getting worse. Like, so I use a pessary, which is kind of a little disc kind of thing, but I was still having problems. And so I'm now using a pessary, and it's better because I don't feel as though I need to constantly go to the toilet. But now I'm trying to get used to the fact that I don't feel the urge and have to make sure that I go before it is too late. So yeah, so again, it's just like, seriously? It's just this constant kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so some timed toileting, like almost like being aware of the clock and how long has it
Yeah.
been, also continence strategies and some pelvic
Mm.
floor physio. And so what I'm
Mm.
hearing here is there's more than one quick answer. It's like a
Oh, yeah.
multiple approaches to addressing it. Tell me about its impact on sex.
Hideous. It's just, it's the whole thing, like I generally feel like I need to go to the toilet all the time. The sex just all of a sudden kind of thing. I've just sort of like, okay, hang on, I've got to make sure, one, the pessary's out. Two, I've got to make sure that I've gone to the toilet enough. And oh my God, have I gone to the toilet enough? Wait, I need another minute. Wait, actually, maybe I need to go again. And it's the constant like, oh my God, am I going to, if I do start feeling turned on, will I wet myself? So it's just that constant like, okay, one, I can't feel it, but then it's also, oh my God, and always afterwards it's like, did I wet myself? And he's like, no, like seriously, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, actually it does. Like, it would be disgusting, the thought of it. It's just yeah.
Yeah, distracting, constantly thinking about it. I mean, managing continence, it's a combination of psychological confidence and
Mm,
a bit of like body image and also a bit of a throwing it to the wind, like, meh, it's just bodily
yeah,
fluid. There's
yeah,
already a passing of bodily fluids. But yeah, a lot of us have been conditioned to, for some, water sports are super kinky too. So, like there's a spectrum
yeah,
of how people interpret it. And so either you got to like embrace the water sport type
yeah.
mentality or use other strategies or
Mm.
shower sex so you don't have to worry
Mm.
about. What have you found has helped with building a little bit of confidence around it?
Now that you sort of bring it up, the shower sex that's decent enough because, one, I can at least sort of stand and not feel. I mean, as long as I'm not, slipping on the floor, because then that again, that could be a
A whole
whole
other
lot of
issue.
other issues. But that at least I don't feel self conscious about. But again, it's kind of like, okay, well, is this the only place that we can do it, kind of thing? Yeah. So it would be nice if I just didn't think so much.
Mm.
But that's easy. And I just feel terrible for him. I said to him, I think just afterwards, you can go somewhere else. And he sort of said, no, I don't want to have sex with anyone else. I want to have sex with you. And I'm like, well, it's not going to be like it was. He's like, that's fine. Like, it's fine. It's in your own time. And so I think I feel a lot of guilt for it, a lot for him. And I feel really sorry for him.
That your sex life changed so much because of the stroke.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. How do you deal with guilt?
I have a good psychologist and I have a really good EP who I talk to sort of through all my sessions because I see her 3-4 times a week, which is great. And she just sort of helps me with just weekly stuff. It took me a long time to realise that the stroke is a brain injury. Can't see it, so it's not like you can see it heal or anything like that, and it doesn't heal. I speak to a lot of survivors and, it is very much like, oh, I should be doing better. It's like, well, yeah, except, check out your MRI. There's still a big piece there that, isn't working and won't. And, other bits of your brain could kind of help a little bit, but that's gone. So sometimes it's that really being kind to yourself. And you have to be in a really good frame of mind to be able to do that and not be exhausted or not be fatigued and all those kinds of things. And yeah, you have normal life that gets in your way, which you want to have a life.
Practice, by the sounds of it. You practice it trying to manage
Yeah.
guilt.
Yeah.
And daily self-compassion. I had this conversation just this weekend about the shoulds. I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And it should be here. And it's sort of like at some point we have to accept that this is how it is right now. And the shoulds are a script. Somewhere along the lines, we've learned what life is supposed to be based on what? Where did you learn those messages? And then how do we unpack them? And some of the things you've talked about now, like where do you think you acquired the messages that lead to the shoulds?
To be able to still compare myself to who I was. And again, there are days when I'm great with it because it's kind of like, well, one, I don't want to be the kind of person I was before. There's been a lot of good that's come out of this. But sometimes when you're feeling at your most vulnerable, you can really sort of kick yourself for not being strong enough or not being good enough and, not being that sort of person that could have coped with that before. So yeah, it's very much that comparison. And where I've heard that there's that saying, comparison is the thief of joy, which again, is true. And when you're feeling good, you can do that. But generally, if you're already sort of feeling a bit crap about yourself, you can't get out of that. So
Yeah. Tell me about the good things that have come from the stroke.
my life was my work. My partner's really great and he always looked after the kids. And before the stroke, I used to travel to New Zealand once a month for my work. We'd have customers overseas, so I pretty much lived and breathed work. What happened after the stroke was that I realised that I was on a certain trajectory which didn't include my family. I saw sort of what could have happened where I might not have had anything to do with my family. My children wouldn't grow up with the mum that they should. They haven't necessarily grown up with a normal mum in that way. And we've had other issues, but, we try our best, and I don't think any child thinks their parents did amazingly. So it doesn't matter if I've had a stroke or not. I certainly have taken a lot of time for reflection because you have a hell of a lot of time in bed or, just sort of doing nothing, and realising really what those important things in life is and are, which for me, knowing that I have enough confidence and enough of a voice to be able to sort of try and improve health and education and understanding of what brain injury and trauma is. I love doing the work I do now. It's not hard because it's kind of like my everyday life. And I get to meet amazing people like you, so it's really cool.
Yeah, and it feels meaningful, right? Like it feels purposeful.
Yeah.
This idea of reprioritizing what matters most, and sort of some people talk about it like a shift in values as well. And that's kind of what I'm hearing here. It's like the value of hustle culture, earning, providing looks like money, and contribution looks like paying off mortgages or something like that, as opposed to maybe contribution is presence, and maybe the values of being there is also a good value too. In what ways do you think your values have shifted?
I certainly know I'm far less selfish and self-centered, and not just about my kids, but about people as well, and even with friendships. And from the stroke, I've been able to, one, be vulnerable myself, and therefore be able to have that space. So I was one of the leaders in the Genius network for the acquired brain injury space, and be able to sort of run coffee clubs and stuff. So be able to run groups of people with trauma, and whether or not they talk about stroke or their injury or whatever, it was a safe space for them to, if they wanted to cry, if they wanted to joke about it, it was entirely their call. Yeah, my values have really changed in that I feel like what I say is how I live. So I walk the walk and talk the talk. I genuinely want to help people. I genuinely want to be in research. When I say things, it's not to have a bit of fun and mess with their heads. It's, well, sometimes it is, but that's only when it's necessary. It's so that I can help, improve systems. So yeah, I feel really blessed in some ways that I had the stroke, which made me kind of go, come on now. And in some ways, I sort of think if it wasn't for the stroke, like nothing was going to stop me. I had a bit of a meltdown just before the stroke, or a few months before the stroke, where I was like, okay, I can't do all this anymore. But then, you have a bit of a break and then you just get back into it because you can. Whereas the stroke, no matter what I tried, I couldn't get back to it. So I think it kind of whacked me and kind of went, no, you sit now. You just, and you think about what you've done. But yeah, and I have from a positive perspective. So yeah.
Yeah, well done. It's not an easy thing to do, like a lot of people don't get to where you're at, and then others, from that positive psychology perspective, we know that it's where we want people to get to, because then they can live life rather than sort of living in the past. And I'm curious, why you've become such an advocate around sexuality and talking about sexuality in rehab.
I guess one of the turning points for me was when I was in Genius. We used to do sort of like video interviews and stuff like that about topics. And we did this video, and basically I talked about, that I felt like this beach whale just sort of sliding around on the bed because I had no control and all this kind of stuff. And we put it up on Genius. And the response that we received about it was just like so many people like, thank goodness, this conversation is actually had. Like, and what was funny, well, not funny, but like I had never even considered men. Like I never considered and how emasculating it would be to not be able to get an erection or, be able to even speak, that kind of thing. I think it was one of our highest sort of views and response, like people actually responded to the video really, really well. And so I thought, and just like everyone else, it was like, finally, I'm not weird. Yes, I had these issues too. And we started talking about them in coffee club and that kind of thing. As I was talking to other survivors, I would bring up sex and that kind of thing. And it was always like, yes, I know, I met one guy who ended up going out with his mates and they're like, that's really good that you're here. But okay, but, can you still get it up? It's such an important part of life that it was like, okay, hang on. If we literally have just had that much of an impact by just having this video in this sort of network of people, we need to get it out there. And I guess because I'm not shy, it was like, okay, well, I'm quite happy to try and to raise that flag for other people who can't talk about it. Because like I would hope that the former me, if I'd seen that sort of stuff earlier, if that would have actually helped.
Kind of sounds like you've gained a lot of confidence talking about sexuality with other stroke survivors and sort of almost being a catalyst to a conversation for people to say, yeah, this is a hidden part of the injury and hidden part of the outcomes, the longer term outcomes of stroke. And I don't know that that's necessarily well understood in the broader community around brain injury and sexuality and the impact on sensation, incontinence and orgasm, and as well as sexual functioning. What do you think helps from your own experience, but also the people you've been talking to, in terms of finding this sort of sexual self-esteem or sexual confidence again?
I mean, I think everyone's different, but it starts with you. It starts with you as a person. It starts with your identity, valuing yourself. When I had the stroke, I didn't know who I suddenly was. It was like, okay, well, you meet people and they say, oh, hi, what's your name? What do you do, kind of thing. And suddenly you're like, well, I don't really do much at all. I can barely get out of bed in the morning. So, there's a conversation stopper there. When I started getting a bit more of, okay, this has happened and it's not great, but hey, I can either sit here and wallow or I can, get up and get moving and make the most of the life that I have and the people around me. And I think from there, that was very much like, okay, so what's important to me? And whilst my own sort of sex life isn't great, what I did find was by talking to other people that it is very important and people need to speak up for people who can't.
To kind of help that sexual self-esteem be addressed for other people as well, and that people's sexuality doesn't just disappear because they've had a stroke, that people don't become
That's right.
asexual.
And it's a big part of people's lives, In your own self, you don't have to be with partners. You don't have to, if you're a person, you're a sexual being. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter what age at all that you are. So that is a big part of your identity. We've been so driven to get home from a physical side. We need to make sure that we're obviously independent and there's no falls risk and stuff like that. But it's not just physical. It wouldn't matter if I sat on my ass all day. It's all the other stuff. It's my mind. It's my mind that just keeps on moving. So sex and intimacy and all of those things are so important to be able to at least acknowledge that it's a big part of your life.
Yeah, even if it's not perfect or resolved, that it's still something that's important and part of you. Tell me what some of the other aspects of intimacy. A lot of people talk about the nature of stroke or the nature of any other type of catastrophic and traumatic injuries are inherently intimate. Just going through this will enhance intimacy, but I'm curious what your experience has been in terms of the ways that, whether it's emotional or intellectual intimacy, that's sort of been fostered because of the stroke.
One of the things that my partner does is he always sits on my left side, which is sort of dumb because kind of like, we'll even be walking and he'll be holding my arm and saying, you realise you don't walk in a straight line? I'm like, I don't even know what you're doing. And he's like, oh, because I'm trying to hold your hand and you keep on walking away. What's been actually really nice lately, we'll be sitting on the couch or whatever, and I'll say, I know you're touching my hand. I need you to explain to me what you're doing. So from that, it's a really kind of not therapeutic, but I guess it's a real connection that I certainly wouldn't have with anyone else. Like even, I mean, my kids would say pinch me just to see if I could actually feel it, but that's a little bit different from my partner actually sort of,
Yeah.
just kind of stroking my hand and giving my shoulder a kiss and that kind of thing. That's probably really intimate that we have done, and I guess that I have accepted.
And what about just the nature of someone being there for you through all of this? Like feeling like someone's reliable or dependable or accepting and almost by the sounds of it, like unconditional love. I'm just curious what your experience has been with that type of intimacy as well.
So that I don't think I appreciated until I did the Genius video, because there were stories where basically people would sort of say, look, I lost my partner because they pretty much said, look, we had great sex and now we don't, so I'm out kind of thing. And even to the point where people are single and do they disclose, and because they sort of get dizzy or have double vision or stuff like that. So it wasn't, I guess, until after that where I kind of went, wow, okay, yes, he's been really, really amazing, but I didn't realize, I guess, to the degree that he was. And even him reading my presentations, and he would sometimes joke and say, that's really good. I'm so glad that our rubbish sex life is, helping other people. I'm like, yeah, well, it's great. it's actually doing it for people. But that is quite an amazing part of our relationship. And he's always been amazing.
Appreciating him in a new light. When you see some very famous sex therapists talk about when you see your partner through the eyes of others, you can sometimes find them more appealing as well, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're seeing your partner now through the eyes of all of these people who have not been able to cope with stroke, you're like, oh, I should maybe appreciate you more. And
Yeah.
I am now seeing you through those eyes of another. And I'm like, oh, I like what I see. And so that's like one of the great things about being involved with research and sort of having like an umbrella view or like a bird's eye view of a whole heap of different issues, is that sometimes you can like have your own personal life experiences reaffirmed and be like, oh, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
we're doing all right in that domain.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. With hindsight, thinking back, it's been the better part of 1.5 decades. Obviously, you've seen a lot of change in that time, both for yourself and then across the industry as well. But what advice do you have for other people living with stroke, to get their needs met?
It's not their fault. I think we're all such high achievers in our own way that a trauma, especially a brain injury or anything that just sort of disables you, makes you really compare yourself and that kind of thing. I think the biggest thing is to be kind to yourself, to know that it's not your fault. You didn't go out there and bash your brain or anything like that. And even if you had high blood pressure and that kind of thing, you didn't cause this. But also going with the flow. So I know that I denied a lot of my feelings for a long time. And then when I let it out, it whacked me completely. Whereas now I kind of go with the flow. It's sort of like, okay, well, I'm feeling pretty rubbish today. That's okay, because I used to sort of think, okay, I'm going to go down fairly deep, but I'll sort of come out and like shed just a layer of crap off me. And even my partner sort of said, actually, you can kind of see that you kind of come out and go, oh, cool, okay, I'm a little bit lighter there. But it's so hard to not feel guilt for something that you had no control over, but there shouldn't be guilt. But again, easier said than done. And that it does get better. Each day I used to say to my partner, like, this stroke sucks. And he'd say, yeah, but last week you weren't able to walk off the curb without us protecting you, whereas now you can. And so it's just very much acknowledging those small wins, because you have massive sort of gains generally in hospital because that's all you're focusing on. The biggest thing is to really start to be kind to yourself and work on yourself first. You certainly can't be anything for anyone else if you don't have enough of your own grounding.
What are your self-compassion strategies or tips? Like, how do you do it? Do you have mindfulness things, or what have you done over the years?
Because my head just sort of goes all the time, I do quite a bit of meditation where I will stop my brain, like, no, stop talking, just stop talking. I've done sort of meditation where I sort of write things down in my head and then scrunch it up in a piece of paper and just throw it out, or just say, like, show it that I'm putting it over there. Okay, that will wait, because it's not, it's not like I have to do it right now at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I try and clear my mind a lot, as well as even sort of appreciating and taking time to doing things that I like and that doesn't take a lot of energy. So like I'll take my dog for a walk and listen to my book kind of thing. That's an easy kind of thing for me to do. So it's just sort of taking time out rather than just sort of sitting there going, oh God, why can't I do this?
Just finding pleasure in daily activities as well. So sitting in the sun, if you're a coffee drinker, feeling the warmth of the cup in your hand and the smell and the taste, and sort of letting the senses do their job.
Being in the moment kind of thing.
Yeah, being in the moment. And I mean, they're all the same strategies that we'd be using within sex as well, like just to encourage people to, yep, sure, okay, we can't feel genitals, so what can we feel? Let's focus on that. Or if we don't have a lot of sensation down one side, well, let's find where we do have the sensation. Or if we're anxious about continence, then what can we do to balance it out? Whether it's pool sex, spa sex, shower sex, like all of those types of places that will make things a bit more confident. Because what I'm hearing you talk about here is that real like anxious, busy mind as well. And so sometimes we need to quiet the mind to be able to surrender in a sexual experience. And that can be so distracting, a little busy mind.
Yes.
Do you have any tips, particularly with sexual activity and the distracting thoughts? Do you have any tips for that?
I feel like I'm a lot more aware because I have had to really sort of dig deep in finding my own, like who I am now. I think as well as being able to, sort of go with the flow of the ups and downs, I think I'm quite more emotionally connected now, which probably does actually help in that way. It's and again, if I said that to my partner, he'd go, really? He's like, oh, I don't know. But that's probably a big thing that I would be quite conscious of.
More attuned to your own sensations and needs and wants. Yeah, lovely. Is there anything that we haven't talked about already that you think is important that we chat about?
Yeah, there's nothing that at least another person is thinking somewhere out there. Yeah, so whilst the therapist might not have brought it up, it's still part of our world, within disability and certainly stroke and that kind of thing. So like I know that when I first had the stroke, people say, oh my God, you're so young. So I used to think, oh, okay, right. Well, if you think I'm young, then there mustn't be anyone out there. When in fact, there were so many people, which later was like, why would you say that? Why would you do that? Or say, wow, you're young. But I do know that there are a lot of people out there that are starting to have strokes at a younger age. Not, oh, you're so young and that's it. Because we see clinicians as the beacons of hope. And if they don't talk about something, then we must just think we're just weird. And that's really, really bad.
Yeah, nobody wants to be the outlier where they're just like, oh, me, I'm out here by myself. So what you're kind of saying here is that no matter what people are experiencing, we kind of need to normalize it. Like in the context of the millions of people who have stroke worldwide, others are thinking the same thing. Your experience has been talked about. I mean, the rise of social media, and I think it's much easier now than 20 years ago when I started in rehab to find other people with similar lived experience, and then to kind of lean into the roles of, peer support and groups and finding other people who have been there and done that. Some people really get like funny, like, oh, I don't want to be a part of a group. And if they've already had a kid, I'll be like, did you participate in like a mother's group or a parenting group when you had a kid? And they were like, oh yeah. I was like, well, that was because you were looking for a community who was living through a similar stage of life. Like you might have had other friends that have had a baby, but they had babies, 4 years ago. You're having a baby right now. And so you want to find other people who are having the same experience as you right now. And they're like, oh yeah, okay. And that can kind of just like normalize it. It's not like, oh, well, hold on, like we'll just go send all the disabled people off together to just like be disabled, whatever that means. It's like there's actually hope within that group. There's recognition of your own experience within that group. The isolation issues can be addressed by saying, actually, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I must admit, I didn't want to catch up with any other stroke survivors, first of all, because I'm like, I don't want to just sit around and talk about waiting to die kind of thing, which was ridiculous once I did actually catch up with people because, they were parents or they were professionals and that kind of thing. But yeah, your own judgment on things aren't necessarily true. It's like, well, they say your thoughts aren't always fact. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, actually just give it, and that's even the same with therapy. I tried different things, and some things work and some things don't. But that's what you do in life. You sort of work out what kinds of things you like, and it's a little bit longer things to get into post-stroke, but you still have complete autonomy and complete sort of power to navigate your own path.
Your experience of not wanting to be part of a group, I've almost 95% of the people I've worked with over the years would say the same thing. I don't want to be part of the group, because it's like accepting that you're part of the group is an enormous adjustment step in itself, right? And so it's like, it's not a group that I want to be part of, therefore I'm resistant to the group. And what could I possibly have in common? I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm never going to push a group on somebody. But like all groups, you might not get along with everyone, but you might find one person, or it might just be enough to kind of say, at this particular time point, I got something out of it. It's not forever. Like mothers groups or parenting groups, at that particular point in time, they can be useful. Doesn't mean that you're still friends 15 years later. You know, it's a time and a place or a reason that you might connect with something. But it's the folks who desperately want nothing to do with the disability community. I'm always like, where did you learn that disability was so terrible? Because that's been internalized, right? And that ableism kind of messaging's been internalized. And so where did that come from? Who told you that being disabled sucked? Like, and hopefully we can start to unpack that to then be able to find people that you can have something in common with and actually draw some strength from and some hope from.
We need to literally flip it and actually sort of make it positive, because again, sort of the judgment on it first up just makes everyone go, oh no, let's just stay away from that one.
I'll be stuck in a group for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for you actually going to a group?
I actually met Cal in person. So I went to something at the Flory, and this guy stood up and challenged one of the researchers. And I'd seen Cal online, like introduced myself, and he and I got along really well. It was a chance meeting, and then it was like, oh, okay, this is really cool. And then I met another stroke survivor, and then that was it. And then I got involved in Genius and like full head on. Yeah. It was great. So yes.
So good. Yeah, you met somebody and realized they didn't meet any stereotypes in your mind. Fancy that. I know. But yeah, I just kind of say to my colleagues, you know what, we can lead horses to water. We can't force them to drink.
Right.
We create opportunities, and when people are ready, they take them. Like I just ran a retreat on the weekend for people, you know, like a sexuality retreat. Some of those people were 16, 20, 40 years post-injury. Like, it's really about when people are ready. Some of them were 2 years post-ready. You create opportunities. People either come or they don't. It's just that way they know that they're there. And I think that's probably some similar correlation to sexuality. We just plant the seed. Sex after stroke's important. If you want to talk more about it, we're here. Or here's a pamphlet, or here's a brochure, or here's a poster, here's a podcast. Have a think. And that's probably all that's really needed in the early days. You don't need to learn about slings and managing positioning or managing sensate. Like, that's not really the stuff that people need in the inpatient setting. They just need to know that it's still possible, and here's some information. If you want to talk more about it, I'm here. We could talk all day about this topic. We're both very passionate about it. Thank you so much for joining us on A Really Good Sex Chat and sharing your story. And thank you to your husband for having his stories shared on his behalf. And he's just like, oh, great, here we go again. I hope that, you know, anyone who does kind of thinking about ABI and stroke, just recognize that it's an important part of rehab. There's many impacts that are maybe not seen or not visually understood, particularly around the fatigue. I heard that when you said that before, like the fatigue and the sensation and the continence. And so just keeping in mind that these are issues that we don't want people to be struggling with in silence.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you. It was good.
A huge thank you to Saran for sharing her story with us today. And I hope that those of us that were listening to her story have taken something away from it and are really reflecting on the ways in which we can support people after stroke to start to explore sexuality and intimacy and their relationships, both with themselves and with significant others, as a priority, as part of their rehabilitation. So a huge thank you to her for her time. If you've enjoyed this episode of A Really Good Sex Chat, I encourage you to jump into Spotify and like us, share it with a friend or a colleague, and look forward to sharing with you next time.